Hi, I'm Shimelle Laine, and welcome to the first day of the new class, the Scrapbook Process. I'm so glad you're here, and I just wanted to make sure at the beginning of our first video that there's a few things that you are aware of. One is that this is not a video-only course. So there's a video every day. There are 22 videos, but there's also 22 PDFs, and the class material is allocated by the PDF, and the PDFs hold a lot of information that you might miss if you only watch the videos. So please do go ahead and make sure that you're having the PDF alongside the video so that you can get the most from the course. The other thing to make sure you know is that although you can just access the PDFs that come by email, you can access everything, including our discussions and sharing your pages, on our forum. The forum is also where you would find anything that you're missing. So if you accidentally deleted something, you missed a message, and you want to come back to the project in the future, you can always find all of those things right here on the forum. That's shimelle.com/forum, and you'll need to log in with your username and password before the class will show up. If you just go to the page, it won't appear there because it won't automatically log you in. You'll need to make sure that you're logged in with your username and password. Okay, think that's all the housekeeping stuff. Let's talk a little bit about where we're starting today. So throughout this course, you're going to see me working in 3 albums. One is a travel album, one is an event album, it's my Olympic album, my London 2012 album, and one is my 2015 family chronological album. So a little bit of background about those. My album system, if you have not taken cover to cover, just a really quick outline, and don't worry, you don't have to take cover to cover, but there are a few things that if you have taken cover to cover will come back and be familiar to you. So I'm just going to quickly go over that, and that's that my album system means that I start with everything in chronological order that I keep in family albums called Our Lives, and then I just label them with the year. When I get to the end of one book, I start a new book and I write volume 2. It's a really simple process. But every once in a while, I will find something along the way in that chronology that deserves to be told in more than a few layouts. And if I left, say, for example, the Olympics, if I made 10, 15 layouts about the Olympics and stuck them into my 2012 layout, into my 2012 album, then when you went through the album, it would be a really distorted picture because there would be all these everyday stories, and then there would be this massive section of the album that was just about the Olympics. And it would feel separate from the rest of our family life story that year. So what I do is an upgrade system, that anytime I find something that has perhaps more than 4 or 5 pages worth of story, I consider upgrading it to a whole album where I have an unlimited amount, in theory, of space and pages to tell that particular story in any way that I'd like. So my Olympic album is definitely an upgrade. I also tend to do longer or more significant travel albums as an automatic upgrade, because if I go away for a week or something, I'm going to take 1,000 pictures. That's definitely going to skew the story of the year. It's definitely something that I'm going to want to do more than 1 or 2 pages about. So I tend to take any big trip and automatically give that an album of its own. I do keep things like just a one-day journey or a weekend journey in my normal chronological album, but anything that's a big deal then gets upgraded. So the travel album and the Olympic album are both different kinds of upgrade albums that I keep in my collection. And then the family album is just one of those normal everyday bits and pieces, all filed in chronological order. So I'm going to give you a look at what my albums look like today, and we're going to flip through, and you might be inspired to look at your own albums, or if you have a big stack of pages, you might be inspired to look at that in a new light. So I'm going to open an album now, and let's have a look. Okay, I'm starting with the travel album, and this is a travel album that is so far 4 volumes. So I'm going to flip through rather quickly, and if there's anything that you want to see in more detail, you can always hit the pause button. Quite a few of these layouts exist in process videos from a long time ago, various years, various weeks. But this particular trip, the reason why the album is so big and over the top is because this was a 4-month round the world backpacking trip. I took, what was it, 9,000, 12,000? I used to say all the time, and now I can't quite remember. It's either 9,000 or 12,000 photos I took in 4 months. And I had decided, well, my first batch of printing was about 1,000 images that I definitely wanted to scrapbook. And I had about 4,000 in my, it would be nice to scrapbook these one day. That's it total. So that original 1,000 is part of the 4,000. So it's a ridiculous amount of photos. I'm never going to scrapbook 4,000 photos, but I might do 1,000. Now, I want to show you things like this because you'll see some honesty in my albums here. For example, I did this side with the intention of immediately doing this side, even have the photos picked out there. But for whatever reason, got distracted, moved on, and I've never come back and finished that top bit there. I have laziness like that. So it's a little bit of reality. So things like that are easy jobs that I need to go back and do. And by flipping through so far, you might have started to see that there are some things in here that I chose at the beginning as continuity points. So everything is on craft cardstock. Also, pretty much every page has a camera involved somewhere, but a few places I missed the cameras out. But quite often, there's a camera on every page. There are also lots of globes and maps and tickets and airplanes, things like that. There are definitely empty spots where there is a logical big gap because this goes from one place to something very different, and there needs to be something in between. Sometimes I would have put the pictures in that page protector, sometimes I wouldn't have. In this case, I have not. I do tend to have pages like this that I try to break the tone. So you saw a lot of pages here that were getting quite busy. There's a lot on the page, there's not a lot of empty space, and then this one is just a single photo with quite a big frame around the edge, and it's to signify that we had finished in one country and we crossed the border into another country. So they're kind of like mini title pages. They're chapter dividers, essentially. Sometimes I did it for a country, sometimes I would do it for just a change of city or region within one country if things felt very different. Okay. So this album had, when I started it, had what I would say is a fair amount of preparation in that I chose the things that I wanted to repeat. I wanted that craft cardstock all the way through. I wanted the cameras all the way through. I wanted a few other motifs to be on most, if not all, pages. But then I gave myself freedom to do things as the photos demanded. So for example, when I got to these pictures and this point in the story, this is all chronological, by the way, so within this album, we started on the airplane and we're going in the order that we journeyed. But occasionally I would stop and change the format because I would have a longer piece of writing that I had written by hand in my journal as we were traveling, and I wanted it to be preserved in my scrapbook. So for those instances, I printed it, usually because I had posted it as a blog post, so I had it printed, or I had it typed already, even though I originally wrote it by hand. And I decided those essays would be better on 8.5 by 11 pages, but I would do a little bit of embellishment to make them match whatever they were meant to go with, so that it would be a little easier for you to figure it out. In hopes that you would then see, oh, this goes with that, rather than this goes with this, although there's not a huge difference. Okay. So I had a fair amount of preparation with the supplies, what I wanted the designs to look like. And, oh, there's another thing that comes up a lot is the colors of mist I used. At the beginning, I chose these two different brown mists, one that was like more a darker concentrated brown and one that was like a sand color with a real shimmer to it. And I used them a lot. I also used a lot of white mist, but I used the white mist more when I got toward Australia in the trip, I think. And so the supplies had planning, and also the photos. When I got back from this trip, I really did make a big plan by putting all my photos in a photo library and reviewing them and starring them and trying to make some sort of sense out of this ridiculous number of photographs. Okay, so that's the end of one volume, and I tend to do volumes clearly just by page number. So I start with about 20 page protectors, and albums come with 10 generally, and I add 10 automatically. When I open the album, I put 10 more in, so that I have the original 10 in a refill pack. And then when I get to about 20, then I start to evaluate, just depending on the album, because different pages have different amounts of stuff on them and different depths. And it might be that on one page I have the chipboard here, and then what if I had 3 other layouts that happen to have the chipboard in the same spot? That means the album's going to be thicker than if the chipboard was in different places on the page. So there's a little bit of leeway once I get to 20. So some albums might have 18 page protectors and some might have 24. But 20 is kind of where I aim to change it up. And so then I just start a new book. My travel albums are red. We'll swap volume 1 for volume 2. I use, obviously, ring binders. I use American Crafts fabric covered albums, which I have used for years. I used them before I started working with American Crafts, if that matters for any reason. And I started with all my chronological, just normal year albums are black, and my travel albums are red. And then I use printed albums for other special occasions, special themes. You can start to see that sometimes then I realize I'd like to change up the feel of things. So you saw a lot of warm yellows, oranges, greens, again, and some reds against the craft in that first volume. And then by the time I get to this point in the story, I kept thinking, all of this color is lovely, but it wasn't always true to my memory of how the story was. And sometimes I want to match the colors to the actual things in the picture, but sometimes I want to match the colors to the emotions in my head. And this particular set of days was really, really happy. I was enjoying it. This was one of my favorite, most energetic points in the trip, and that came out in my process by having lots more pink and turquoise. So the colors became cooler, bubblier, and dare I say a little bit more youthful. And so it has a slightly different tone, but it's all held together because it still has cameras, it still has craft cardstock. There's still a lot of similarity. Okay. There's a mix of double pages and single pages. You can see that I tend to have a simpler style when I do double pages. I think because it is easier to take in a full double page if there is less intricate stuff to look at. Whereas if I'm only looking at 12 by 12, then if I have this massive area of really detailed embellishment, it's okay, because within a 12 by 12 page, I feel like there's enough room for you to look at the photos and look at all this crazy embellishment and still come out okay. But when it's this whole big 12 by 24 canvas, I feel like I have to simplify it a little bit. I don't think that's a hard and fast rule. It just happens to be what happens when I create double pages. There you go. Okay, I do sometimes try to coordinate across the page, even if it's not the exact same moment in the story. So you'll see the oranges here reappear, and then I brought orange into the facing page, and these are still chronological, but the color matches up. But it also means that I end up with empty spots like this, where this, I don't have anything that goes against this, and then I have this, and I know that I have more photos even though I didn't put them in the page protector. I know I took so many pictures of this particular morning that I have more to scrapbook there. And then I have a double here. Okay. Lots of honesty here, so I quite often will clean my stamps by turning the page over and stamping them on the back. There you go. Again, this is brighter colors. picking up on the mood. This was a really fun day with a lot of giggling, and to me that translates when I scrapbook into the cooler colors. This was a more, what's the word? Not agonizing. A day with more challenge and victory. I had not ridden a bike since I was in school, and then I had to learn how to ride a bike again on the streets of Vietnam. It was such an emotional journey that I ended up doing 2 pages on it. One with that great big photo and just a little bit of journaling, and then this one with small photos and more insight. I think I did this one first and I didn't feel like it captured everything, even though I liked it. Then I went back and made another. This was a page I did, and I'm not entirely sure if it will ever stay in this format because it doesn't involve the craft cardstock. The colors are still the same, but I tried leaving the craft out. I don't love that it breaks the continuity. It's okay. I don't hate it, but I don't love it because it feels different when I turn the page. In my 12 by 12 chronological family albums, that wouldn't bother me at all, but it does in this album. Okay, this was one that I used. This is definitely a process video elsewhere because this was a sketch by Allison Davis, who uses lots of double pages and lots of photos. And I was trying this as a different technique for getting lots of images on the page since I have so many in this particular album. The result is something that looks a little different from my ordinary style, but I had hoped that in the embellishment I brought it back to something that still looked like I made it. Sometimes across the page is 2 different feelings. Without going further down that path, sometimes the big change in design or color or anything is immensely important to me. And I think that's something we will come across as we are going through this month-long project, but hopefully not quite as emotional as this particular layout. Okay, good deal. Then I followed up with something that happened the very same day. We go to dinner and we order spiders. There you go. Then we have a page that needs some glue. Why don't I just fix that while we're here? And this is a divider page. So we're changing towns now. We're changing regions. So we left Phnom Penh and we go to Siem Reap, and the 2 have a very different feel, even though they're in the same country. Make sure those are all stuck. Okay. All right. Just seems, and this is something I recommend. Oh, this one. See, this one needs help too. If you do notice things like this when you're flipping through, might as well just go ahead and fix it now, so you don't end up with a big to-do list of extra jobs later. Okay. The camera motif sometimes comes up in something smaller, or something that's in the background. So a lot of pages, at first you might not notice the camera, but it's most likely there. There are some where I've missed the camera, but most of them have a camera somewhere. And then this is a change in location again. So this, actually, well, let's see. When did we change countries? We went back into Thailand. So this, yeah, so that's Cambodia. This is Thailand. So in this instance, I don't have a dividing page, and that actually gave me some confusion here. So maybe that should be a signal to me that I need a dividing page there. I need a chapter page. And back into Thailand. And then this is also Thailand, although a different town. And lots of pages with that, or lots of photos with that extra bit of a page. Still craft cardstock, but printed craft cardstock, which was something that I kind of tried to see what I would think, and I think it works okay. Okay, and then I don't have any magical closing page because that was just where I got to a natural point where this album was pretty much full, and I should move on to volume 3. So let's grab volume 3, shall we? Okay, and lots of open space. This one is a dividing page. We're now on to Malaysia. But I scrapbooked this photo twice. 2 different stories though. This one was just kind of a more general opening page. And then this is actually about what's in the picture, which means I need to figure out what goes there, because how do I have something in between 2 prints of the same photo? So this one may end up moving over here, and then something else can go there. Or maybe the view from this tower, if I do a layout with some larger versions of these photos, or different shots, but that idea of the photos that came from the tower, then that could go there, perhaps. And then a big gap, really, because I leave out anything else from Malaysia. I leave out Singapore. I leave out Bali. And I jump to Australia because that was what was inspiring me when I was working on these pages. So I know in my head that there's a big gap there that's probably almost a full volume. But then on to Australia. And Australia tends to have a different color scheme in some of the pages, even though I'm still dealing with the craft, because it feels very different to Asia. Simple. I tried a little bit here because things were feeling different about changing up the craft and using it as mattes and accents and as paint colors instead of the background. And I still mostly used the craft, but I felt like a little bit of something different was okay because it felt so different as a country. But the other things stayed there. Still cameras, still maps, still globes. Yeah. The white spray starts in Australia and appears on a lot of the pages. Lots more of that white mist. This entire page is actually covered in the white mist by happy accident, because I sprayed it outside and the wind caught it and it went everywhere. But it actually felt quite true to the day, so I left it rather than reprinting the photos. And yep. Lots of gaps in the story here. So this is a different town than the one before, and this is a different town than that, so I've just left a gap, knowing that I have to go back and fill in those gaps at some point, but I'm not in a rush. A few pages together when there are bigger events along the way, and lots of photos. This is a page that's in an early Glitter Girl adventure where I'd done the page once and it was in the album, and then as I worked on the other pages, they were way more intricate than this one, so I went back and added more stuff to it, and I like it a lot better after I added the stuff. I tried this for a different look with the craft cardstock. I don't love it, but it was okay enough for me to leave this particular layout like this, but I decided I wouldn't continue with that technique. It's craft cardstock, but it's textured craft cardstock, and then I rubbed color over the top, like ink. Just to try something. Sometimes try it, see if you like it. If you don't, no big deal. So I do that a lot. Extra photos from this place that was really photogenic, so I have a lot of pictures, and I added them on a 6x12 page protector. Something has come apart here. This should be at the top. There we go. Oh, this one needs help in more ways than one. Also, this page is yellow. It's not on craft. And this whole thing needs putting back together. Okay. It happens. Sometimes it happens because I didn't use enough adhesive. Sometimes it happens because something was wrong with the adhesive. Sometimes it happens because the albums go on the road with me and don't just live in their nice cushy house on a shelf. And sometimes it happens because even the shelf has to move house when we move house. And a lot of my albums are on about house number. Or like they've done 6 house moves or something stupid like that. And that means that I get the occasional bit of repair. However, I'm mostly happy, as you can see, although I'm making these few repairs for the amount of pages that are here and all of that I just told you, it's not too bad. Now that I've said that, I'll probably come across the next 6 pages will all have stuff falling off them, and that will be very sad. So hopefully not so bad. Okay. this, I think because of the style of the photos, this is when I started trying things that weren't craft, and so I wasn't keen on the yellow. The yellow was too bright, so I decided I wouldn't do that again. But I tried this pattern paper that was kind of similar in tone to craft, but not solid. And I do quite like this one, even though it does feel a little bit different. And even more photos from this particular street. And at this point I just went, you know what, I'm going to stick 10 of them in a page protector and just leave it there, because there's so much to see in those photos, and I've just scrapped so many pages of it that it's okay for me to just leave those details there. That's enough. Then moving on. Again, a little change in color coming with a change in mood. That color is still going through it. The change in mood, and the reason that color becomes so prevalent here is because we had a few days of just the most gorgeous sunshine. Like, it never stopped being so gorgeous, and that really sticks in my mind when I remember that particular part of the trip. So I wanted to put lots of blue on those scrapbook pages so that when I got to those pages I would remember, oh, that gorgeous blue sky, because I've got pictures like this that let me know there was that gorgeous blue sky, but that's not the same as when I saw it with my actual eyes, of course. Okay, a bunch of just plain 5 plain 4x6 photos, but then one little card to make it coordinate with a layout. I quite like that technique. It also is nice for using up the scraps, because this is all just made with bits and pieces I had left on the desk after I made this page. So sometimes, you know, when you cut out a supplier or something, you're like, oh, I'm going to use this on this layout, and then it doesn't fit in the end. This is a great way to automatically go, nope, it can go in because I can just do this. That makes me happy. Okay, and then Farewell Australia, which was a natural point to stop this album and move, can you believe it, to volume 4. Here we go. By the way, 4 is as far as I am. Okay, and you're going to see the reason why I have chosen this one to work on this month. Okay, so we move on to New Zealand. Fine. Pretty much everything is still staying the same. Lots of 4x6 photos, craft cardstock, cameras, butterflies, maps, some gaps that need filling with things from the story. That big gap is the Christchurch earthquake and how it changed our trip. So I know I need to scrapbook that, but I haven't. So right now it's just a big empty gap to remind me. Again, occasionally something that isn't on craft cardstock, and seeing it like this always makes me think I should just cut this down a little bit and put it on a border of craft cardstock. But maybe that's being a little controlling. I'm not sure. You can decide. But yes, sometimes the craft cardstock is just there in the very background. Sometimes it's printed craft cardstock. Again, printed. Change in color for a change of mood, because the weather here felt very autumnal and the weather here actually felt very spring-like, one day following the next. And it was just the surroundings, actually. It wasn't actually a change of season. It was just being... While we were in South America, we went to Chile and Argentina, and here is what we have in the album from it. Welcome to Santiago. A day in the garden, like a big park in Santiago, which some reason I've used a bit of map from France, but let's just leave that as randomness. Then this is Buenos Aires in Argentina. And that's the end. So where you saw, like, there's almost an entire album of Australia, I get to an entire country and I have 1, 2, 3 layouts. Whoops. So this is where I really need to devote some energy and figure out how I can tell that story. There is that gap in the middle where I left out Bali and Singapore, but I feel like this leaving out an entire continent is a bit of a big deal. So this is where I'm going to focus my energy, and that you will see here throughout class. It's on the South American portion that's going to go in this album, keeping in mind that I'm going to be scrapbooking this now when I worked on a lot of these pages 3, 4, 5 years ago. How do I make it all fit together? So that's what we're going to see. The next two album flip-throughs are much shorter. So this is my London 2012 album. Because it's an upgrade album, it's in a print, and then this one is black with white cameras. But they're still the same size, the same manufacturer, the same pretty much everything as the rest of my albums. They all fit on the shelf together. And this is one that I basically want the whole story to fit in one album, although it might be a push. Now, this has significantly less planning. I did not have any agenda when I started making these pages. I just made each one as it went, and then quickly realized that I was going to have more than just 4 or 5 pages on this story, and I would like to put them all together. So you don't see something that has a lot of continuity like the craft cardstock or the camera embellishments. You will see that I started doing LDN 2012. And that's on pretty much every layout somewhere. So it's here. And that was pretty much it. Everything else is pretty random for page by page. And there are lots of gaps, things I need to work out. And some things feel like they have more continuity than others. For example, this one feels very different, but the memory is very different. So I'm okay with that, but I need to figure out how it all should flow together, I think. So just having a look so that you know what this album looks like at this point, and you'll be able to see the changes that are going to happen to this album between now and when it's all complete. And when I say complete, I do have a belief that none of my albums are ever complete or incomplete. They are all a work in progress, and I am absolutely happy with them, gaps and all. If you came into my house and wanted to look at albums, I would happily show you this, even though it has gaps, even though it has, bits and pieces that are missing or look a bit unmatchy. That's absolutely fine, does not bother me at all. And I feel like the reason that I don't ever feel like they are technically complete is because I want to have the freedom to come back and add perspective in the future. So it might be that after this year's Rio games, what if I have a perspective from watching it and reading about it that I want to go back and write? That's okay. I have permission for myself to go back and read, or go back and write more, add more to the album. Okay, so that's everything that's in this one. And I want this, I have a vision in my head for what I want this album to look like, and it's significantly different than everything that I've finished so far. So I'm hoping that I can pull it all together, and you will see my process for that. So I have a little bit in mind of how I want this to work, but not a serious amount of planning for every single page, which gives me my happy medium. So you've got one album with lots of planning, one album with a little bit of planning, and then one album, my chronological albums, have pretty much no planning at all. So the chronological album I'm going to be working on is 2015, and I want to show you this in full honesty. Most of my chronological albums are black, but when I went to order them the last few times, the black's been out of stock, and so I have this printed camera version that I'm using at the moment, but my intention is that when the black ones are back in stock, then I will swap them out and this will become something else. Okay, so these are in chronological order. They do include gaps where there's a big gap in the time frame. So this is January, but that's the only page I've done for January 2015, and this is February 2015. So I'm guessing I have photos somewhere that are going to go there. I think this is probably going to move to his baby book, but it has ended up in this album so far. I have quite a few pages here for Easter, but then I jump from Easter to his birthday. And there are a few pages about his birthday, but not as many as I imagine in my head, so there are gaps too. More gaps. And this album is something that my process is that when I finish a layout, when I photograph it, then I put it straight into an album. But sometimes I do need to go back and rejig things. So what you're going to see in just a few seconds is what happens when I'm in the process of rejigging. So the page protectors stop because this one only has 10, and I know I said I almost always open it and put another packet in, and in this case I didn't, which meant when I was in the process of rejigging, I ran out of page protectors. So I have this one here, which means silly things like this happen that I don't want to happen. And by and large, my pages stay intact because they go straight into the page protector and they don't have this stacked or filed system. But I had everything in totally random order, so I took it all out so I could get it in chronological order. I think that's not my normal process. I think I just did it because I was short on time and lazy, and I took a shortcut and then later regretted the shortcut. So I'm going to flip through so you can see these pages, but basically I create every single page individually. I don't have any sort of plan for what the overall feel of the album is going to look like, and I'm absolutely fine with that. But I do try to reference what I've made when I create a new page so that I don't end up with a lot of things like this, where this is going to be 2 prints of the same photo and they're printed a bit differently, so the photos don't even quite match side by side. Although the story is different. So I'm glad that I looked and I saw that when I got to this point, I was like, oh no, I need to reference. I looked, and then I changed the aspect of the journaling. But there are lots of different colors. This year there's a lot of blue. But there are plenty of different colors. There's reds, there's pinks, there's all sorts. I use a lot of green too. Just flip through to the end, and keep in mind that this is the current status as I start this class, and if you have albums that are in a similar status, that's absolutely okay. So that's everything I've done for 2015. So I will be going through my photo library to work out what else needs to go into this album, but I will also be doing a bit of construction to the album to make sure everything's going to work. I don't worry about all of 2015 fitting in one book, and I can just start a new volume, and there are years on my shelf that have volume 1, 2, 3. If there are no upgrade albums, then they tend to have more chronological albums. If there are several topics that I decided actually no, I'll take this and put it in a separate album, then the chronological albums hold a bit more and they don't need so many volumes, just by way of moving stuff around. Okay, so those are the 3 albums that I'm going to be working on throughout this class, the Scrapbook Process. You are going to see 21 more videos. You're going to see a lot of the preparation or no preparation for creating the pages, and then you're going to see a lot of pages actually made, and we'll talk all about it. Okay, I appreciate today's video is very long, so I'm going to leave you here with a few thoughts on how you can apply this process to your own albums. Thanks so much for taking a look at my albums today. I hope that this gives you a nice understanding of my priorities when I'm scrapbooking and what my general system is, and that will give us all a great grounding to go ahead from here so that everything kind of makes sense in context. But I do think that it's really worthwhile that you take this information and apply it to the way your albums work. So you might find that opening at least one, if not more than one, of your own albums and flipping through can really help your understanding as we go through and apply all these different concepts to your own crafting. So if you have time, go find an album of your own, find an album that you're happy with, or find an album you're unhappy with, and have a look and see if you can identify the things that make you happy or unhappy about that particular book. And then you'll have that knowledge as we go through and look at different styles of creating pages and albums and telling those bigger stories. And please don't feel that just because I keep saying bigger stories means lots and lots of journaling. Sometimes yes, but a lot of times no. So that's okay. Don't be intimidated by that. I definitely don't want it to be anything scary. It's definitely friendly. But if you are aware of the things that you do and don't like about how your pages go together in albums right now, that will help you. And it is absolutely perfectly okay to admit that right now your albums are not in the state that you wish them to be, or that your pages are not in albums at all. Hopefully in a few days' time you will have a bit of direction and maybe feel like giving that a change. Okay, I will see you tomorrow with a new video and a new PDF, and tomorrow we're going to start talking about how to prepare an album that you want to have preparation. So I will see you then. See you soon.